Hi, I'm Vanessa Kisawile, leader of Sahara Sparks. This year's event is looking to explore what is in store for Africa after 2020. This year has been one of a kind. It has brought unprecedented events. But hey, what should we invest more in the continent after this year's experience? What are the areas we need to focus more? What are the lessons that we've had? And what is most important for Africa when it comes to job creation, when it comes to investment, even growing the business and investment landscape of each region in Africa? This year, we're looking to see how can we reimagine the future of the continent. You're welcome. See you there.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hello again, and welcome to our session. This session is going to be focusing on natural language processing and what's the roadmap looking like for the adoption of this technology for Africa, and what are the challenges and some of the roadblocks, some of the opportunities, and I'm just giving a very high level overview of this. But Sahara Sparks, as you know, will be happening this week and the coming week. It'll be the place to be for entrepreneurs, for innovators, technologists. So make sure you register for all the sessions you're interested in. For today's session, we have two very special groups here, and those we have two very special innovation groups and companies and startups. I'm not sure what would be the best way to describe them because they do so many awesome things that I feel I would do injustice just giving them one title. Today will mostly be led by inspired ideas, and they are doing a lot of amazing work. And we also have Beltro, who will be giving us their insight and the work they do in the NLP space. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Inspired Ideas.
All right. Thank you so much, Essa, and welcome everyone to our panel discussion on natural language processing and the future of natural language technologies for African languages. My name is Megan. What? Say something. Can you hear me?
Yes, Megan, we can hear you. So part of this session we'll have a few things happening, including a poll, and we always want this to be as interactive as possible, so we will ask for your insight at different points throughout the session. So please do be prepared to share with us some of your ideas, some of your thinking, and some of your insights on what you feel NLP, natural language processing, and the automation of these types of conversations might look like when taking into account Africa.
Thanks, Essa. And so sorry, I was being told I couldn't be heard. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys could all hear me. So let me start this over. My name is Megan Allen. I am the co-founder and a health technologist working with Elsa Health in Tanzania. I am both a tech enthusiast and someone who's incredibly passionate about creating technologies for good that are both inclusive and accessible. So this is a very timely and interesting discussion for me, and I'm excited and honored to be the moderator for this discussion and to share the stage with three incredible innovators and entrepreneurs. Like Essa said, these humans are doing big things in the world, so I don't think one title just captures exactly what it is that they're doing. So I'm going to do a short introduction for our talk today, and then I'll introduce the panelists, and then we'll just get going. I have some questions that I want to ask first, and then after that, we'll open up the questions to the audience. So like Essa said, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We want this to be as interactive and as much of a discussion as possible. And I'm more than happy to be, pulling questions from the chat during my conversation with the panelists and then towards the end as well. So keep them coming and keep them flowing. All right, so what are we talking about today? I think if you just watched the video of our good friend Vanessa, we are talking about reimagining the future of the African continent and what technologies look like, what inclusive technologies look like for the future and for all of our work. It's been largely discussed and agreed on that natural language processing technologies, including tools like chatbots and voiceover. However, there are significant challenges that presents itself in the African landscape because of the amazing diversity of over 2,000 languages across the continent. One of these significant challenges is, of course, that many of these languages are low resourced, which means that we don't have enough data and information to be able to build the types of technologies like we might have in other languages such as English or French, for example. With Africa being considered the fastest growing continent in the world, being able to provide content, resources, and services in local languages is becoming an ever more important task. The development of these tools allows Africa to take part of the global conversation and opens doors for the world's youngest continent to play a stronger role in shaping the digital world. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be chatting today about artificial intelligence and natural language processing with African languages. We'll hear from these innovators about exactly what they're doing in their own work and what they see is the future of the landscape for NLP technologies. And yeah, we'll just have a good discussion about everything that you guys are interested in. And our panelists are very excited and very willing to answer all of your questions. So don't hold back. And before we jump into any specific questions, I am going to just share my screen quickly. Yes. All right, so here is a photo of our wonderful panelists today that I want to introduce you to before we get started. Frederick is the CEO of Beltro, working to transform conversational AI in Africa by teaching computers to speak African languages. He believes in a future where language is not a barrier to accessing the digital world. And Frederick, welcome. I'm super excited to hear more about what you're working on at Beltro.
Thank you, Morgan.
Welcome. All right, our second panelist, Nelson. Nelson is a resident statistician at Inspired Ideas, and he is dedicated to developing evidence-based analytical solutions to some of the problems facing the world's poor. He is currently earning his MicroMaster's degree in data economics and development policy in early 2019. He has gone to push for more data-driven solutions in various ways, including winning first place for the 2020 AirCo Uganda Air Quality Forecast Challenge. Very exciting. Congratulations, Nelson. Fueling his drive is an enthusiasm for knowledge, which he also transfers to developing a skill set that includes amateur artistic skills whenever he isn't preoccupied with wrangling data. And for all of you, this is very true. I've seen these amateur artistic skills firsthand. So welcome, Nelson. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you, Megan, and hi, everyone.
Awesome. And last, our final panelist is Kevin. Kevin James is the technology lead at Inspired Ideas. He's enthusiastic about AI and machine learning. He has invested his heart in building natural language processing tools for Swahili. This is also something I can attest to firsthand. And he's just, quote, this is a quote from Kevin directly, he is just another machine learning boy in a machine learning world. So welcome, Kevin. And we're excited to hear more about the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Megan. Looking forward to the discussion.
All right, perfect. So let's jump right in. You guys no one wants to hear me talk anymore. They want to hear you guys talk. So I'm going to kick us off by having each one of you, Frederick, Kevin, and Nelson. I'd like for you guys to share a little bit about just who you are and particularly what are you working on. So for your respective companies, what type of work are you doing? Within that work, what is most intriguing or exciting to you? Whatever you feel like would kick off this conversation and let the audience know about the specific work that you're doing, I think would be great. And Frederick, I will invite you to go first.
Yeah, so hi everyone. It's nice to finally be at this session, and I'm looking forward to really learn a lot from all of you. And also, I hope you can learn some things from me. So to start, my full name is Frederick Apina, like the introduction, and I'm the CEO of Beltro. At Beltro, we are working to teach computers speak African languages, because we believe that when it comes to African languages, or African as a continent, we are the ones to spearhead and come up with technologies technologies on computers that speak our languages. We saw that there's a challenge that we can't expect someone coming from outside of Africa to come and create these technologies for us. Like Megan said, there's a lot of languages in Africa, and in this case, with all these languages, there's a very big opportunity for developers, for innovators to come up with different NLP technologies. We've seen NLP thriving in other continents, but somehow in Africa, there is a challenge because of the language barrier, because of the different languages that are present in Africa. But again, there's an issue of, we are at a point where all of our world is digitized. We're living in a digital world. So us being in a digital world, one thing that affects Africa is that we are not able to fully participate in the digital world because of the language barriers that are present. I'll take an example, for example, here in Tanzania. So in Tanzania, the most spoken language is Swahili. And if you take, for the case of Swahili language, it's spoken with more than 150 million speakers. So I find that that's a big number of speakers that are present just for Swahili language. And for the case of Tanzania, imagine that most of the speakers of Swahili, or most of the speakers of the language, the most spoken languages in Tanzania is Swahili. And this is the largest number of the people in Tanzania who access different services. So we find that there's a big challenge when it comes to and there's a limitation on the way they access the digital world, just because of the language barrier that is present. You find that most of the digital resources that are found online, they're all in English. So if Beltro saw this, and we thought that there's a very big gap. And one thing that we thought about is most of us Africans, almost people, when we talk about AI, we think of AI as something very high level, and it's not for us in Africa. So with Beltro, we had a different thinking, a different view to this, because we believe that we can take technology, which is taught as very high level, and bring that technology to a low level where it can have an impact and access to anybody. We don't have to think of technologies in such a way that maybe we can't create robots. Maybe we can't create these superficial robots that maybe they're very high advanced in other fields. For example, for the case of NLP, but we can take NLP and put it in the context of Africa, whereby we are able to solve our African problems, and we can utilize NLP in a ways that it has an access and impact to everybody. So that's us, Beltro. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Frederick. And I have a question I'm going to come back to later about something you said, but just
Okay.
to dig in a little bit about what Belch was doing, you're working specifically on Kiswahili as a language, right? Are there other languages that you're working on or thinking about working on in the future, possibly?
So at the moment we're working on Swahili. So it's Conversational AI on Swahili. But the bigger vision is being able to move on all languages now in Africa, but taking it one step at a time. Yeah.
It's a big goal. Yeah.
Oh,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, I'll give it over to you, Kevin, to share a little bit about yourself and the work you're doing.
Hello, everyone. It's Kevin James here. At Inspired Ideas, we mainly focus on building tools around Swahili NLP. So building tools that are Swahili first. And what we are currently doing is creating native models that would essentially try to understand how Swahili would work or would be understood in a natural way, different from how it's currently being handled, which stems from deriving, either translating from English to Swahili or Swahili to English, then understood in English, then translated back to Swahili. So what we're currently doing at Inspired Ideas is building tools that would natively understand what we're working on in Swahili natively. Yeah. So that'll be what we're doing.
Awesome. Nelson, you have anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, hi everyone. Here with Kevin. And while we're usually working on the same thing, my job is mostly trying to make sure that most of the models that Kevin and I work on are we try to hold them to the highest standard, and I usually try to break them as best as I can just to make sure that it is within the rules of data science and statistics, because these are the building blocks of machine learning and all that. So that's just me, a glorified Wreck-It Ralph. But yeah, that it's great work, and I can say for the most part, speaking for both of us, we have tons of fun and sleepless nights. But yeah, it's good.
Hey, that's important as an innovator. So keep up the good work. That's really awesome. I have a question for both of you, just because we got to hear a little bit from Frederick about like why they're doing the work that they do at Beltro, and I could tell that Frederick is incredibly passionate about what they're working on. So why are you guys working on this? Why is this something that you care about? Why is it something that Inspired Ideas cares about? Yeah, love to know.
Right. So speaking on my perspective, at least, part of what motivates me to dealing with Swahili NLP is to make sure at least that Tanzania, or the language Swahili itself, is ahead of the NLP game when it comes to how NLP is tackled in other languages like English or French in other countries, because I like to believe that some of the tools that are necessary to be able to do advanced stuff, so this could be things like sentiment analysis or like language translation, stems of having something that works best for that language. So say without having a proper Swahili model, we won't be able to get good language translation, say from Swahili to French or Swahili to English and things like that. Yeah, so my true motivation at least is to try to make sure that Swahili is ahead of the game, and also trying to build tools around that, making sure even other people like developers able to use these benefits that comes with having Swahili driven tools. Yeah, leave the set off to Nelson.
I would say I share the same sentiment, only if hopefully you're paying attention to Meg's awesome description of me. I am, as I quote Megan, I strive to develop analytical solutions to some of the problems that face the world's poor. And to a context like Tanzania, most of people living in or below the poverty line, or people living in hardship, are likely not gonna benefit from tools that are not from their native language. So I see NLP as a way to develop solutions that are more catered to Tanzanians or to people in a specific context when compared to rolling out tools that are probably built in English that cannot be efficiently or effectively used by people in or most for the moment or at the moment it's within the context of Tanzania, and that's why I find it awesome and also very 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 I hope and believe that it'll add as much value to whatever solutions that are built using our tools. And yeah, that I would say that's my drive.
That's awesome. Thank you both. One, for your commitment to the work, and two, for just sharing. I think I'm incredibly impressed with people who spend their life uh, wanting to make a difference for other people. And even though it's difficult, like, right, the road that the three of you are on, and many of you in this panel discussion are on, is not an easy one for sure. And I just really appreciate the work that you're doing, so that like technologies can actually be accessible to everyone, that they can be inclusive, and that we can bring that, like, the amazingness that we can put in tools and computers and other types of technologies to the world's poor, or to people who don't have access to them. So thank you guys for the work that you're doing. Before I go on to my next question, I'm going to also give Essa a chance to share a little bit about the work of the AI Lab Tanzania. Just to share a little bit, even though your photo wasn't listed on there, Essa, I'm so sorry. But it'd be wonderful to hear what the AI Lab is doing.
Hello again, everyone. So it's all right. The photo thing, I prefer to stay behind the scenes when I have a chance. So
That's fair.
AI lab, very simple concept. Artificial intelligence is growing. We see the opportunities. We see that there are a number of things we need to learn, we need to engage with, we need to be able to do before we can fully take advantage of it in a way that helps us and helps the people around us. And we've seen so many talented people, more so than you'd imagine, in Tanzania. We've seen so many startups, and institutions are also doing work within the space. But what we've noticed is they're very much siloed. We have a lot of them doing the work on their own and not talking about it, because we know this is some hard work and can get very tedious. So who has time to talk about it when we're busy trying to get things done? So we are trying to come in and help create that environment where if someone has a challenge or someone has an idea or someone wants to do something to engage another practitioner with, another enthusiast with, they have an opportunity to do that. They have a place they can go to learn, to engage, to share, and basically feel at home with fellow nerds, but we just limit ourselves to AI for the time being. But some will say that's not really a limit, because this field is a little bit too broad, considering it can be applied in just about every sector out there. So yeah, that's what the AI lab is working to do, and we do this through a series of events. We do this through trying to create some content, articles, a podcast that's still kind of in the works. We do this through what we are working on right now is called the Idea Lab project. Some of you know of it, that focuses on creating solutions with grassroots communities. And we actually have a session that will talk about the project happening tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, you can register for it as well. And through this, hopefully creating more talent, more skill, more solutions that solve realistic problems, and growing the ecosystem as a whole, which I'm sure you will hear that phrase a lot of times in this Sahara Sparks, about growing the ecosystem. Because as much as we keep on talking about it, there is a lot of opportunity for growth, and there's a lot of opportunity for developers as well as startups to get into the space and and be able to do amazing work even without competing. So everyone's welcome to join the community, join the group, engage however you feel you'd like to share what you know, learn what you don't.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Essa. I really appreciate it. All right, I know, Essa, you also have a short questions for people, for the audience. Oh, okay, we're gonna share our questions for the audience in a bit. Don't worry, that's coming for you all. All right, let's jump into a couple of other questions I have. And I want you all to know that I'm scanning the chat, so hopefully I'll be able to catch all of your questions you post in there. Before we move on and dig into some of the use cases and challenges that I want to talk more about, Frederick, there was a question posted directly to you about if you are mainly working on language translation. So maybe you can give a little bit of insight into that.
Okay. Maybe I could expand on that. So currently, Beth is not working on language translation. We've largely based on creating chatbots and doing semantic search. So those are the two areas that at the moment we're currently heavily invested on. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. All right. So let's talk about some of the ways that these technologies can be used in the African context. So Frederick, you shared a little bit about all of you shared about some of the challenges. Frederick, you shared about some of the things you would like to see happen in terms of the improvements of NLP technologies for African languages. But how exactly do you see these technologies being used? And particularly, how do you see them being used across the African continent, which is different, like you pointed out, Frederick, than maybe somewhere like the US or Europe. Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what you think and hearing a little bit about both how they're used and also how does that differ from how NLP technologies might currently be used.
Okay, thanks, Megan.
Sure.
So the way I see us using NLP in Africa, I'm thinking that we take a different approach to maybe the ones that has been taken elsewhere. What I see, one of the biggest challenges that I see in Africa is which limits which can somehow limit on the way we tackle NLP is most people say that the biggest problem that we have is on issues of data. But honestly, on my side, what I've come to understand is the problem is not mostly on data, but the problem is mostly on the experts who can work on these NLP problems. So this is one of the areas that I see that is a big challenge. And this also hinders a lot of the applications that we could do with NLP. Earlier, I talked about one of the areas that I talked about is the opportunity that I see on taking these high-level technologies and taking them at a low level where it has big impact on different people. So, for example, I could talk about a few examples that I see that there's a big opportunity there, but just because of the case of, I think somehow because of the expertise of thought, that's why we think like NLP is something that maybe so challenging, maybe something that we can tackle at the moment. Maybe most of the use cases that when it comes to Africa, when we talk about NLP, you find that most of the time we talk on language translation, but there are other areas which maybe language translation requires a lot of data, but there are other problems that they don't require that much of data, or the data on those problems is already available. It's just us utilizing our skills and expertise and trying to come up with different solutions of those problems. For example, I'll give you an example. They use some of the interesting use cases that Bertrand has been exploring and looking at when it comes to NLP. So, for example, we have a lot of nowadays we have a lot of blog posts and different websites providing different news. So it depends. For example, the common ones or the most famous ones we have Millardayo, Bongo 5. So there are different blogs that provide different news. So one of the use cases that one of the very potential use cases that we could have. So those informations, we find that there are times that most of those news, they are very long news. So for example, maybe it takes a lot of time for you to read through those news. But with NLP, we can do something like one of the areas that we can exploit and try to apply on these problems. For example, the case of text summarization. So text summarization is one of the areas in NLP where with this different users that are available, we can just have come up with models that are able to summarize all these different uses. So in such a way that maybe we could also be providing highlights that can at least trigger the reader to read that news more. So instead of having people summarizing this text to trigger the readers, but we can have algorithms that do this. And these blog posts, they are places that people already go, people already visit. And they are among the people that attract a lot of online users. So that is one of the areas that we see. But also, there are areas of the same. I will talk also on the area of news. So, for example, we can also exploit issues of text classification. This is one of the areas. I think. So one of the common app that I use for reading my news is Google News. So one thing that I like of, and which is very interesting about Google News, is the fact that it provides news by not having their own editors that write those news. So what the app just does is scrap the different news from different sources online and brings them through an app so that you can read them. So this is one of the areas that I see that is a very good opportunity for us, because that falls under text classification, because we have a lot of different news blogs, like I said, and maybe news websites that provide news. That's one of the areas that we can be utilizing text classification. So instead of having people going through these different newses and trying to classify them. So, for example, maybe these are business news, these are sports news. We can have models that are trained on these different news classifications, and yeah, and then instead of having a person, then the news can just classify all the Swahili news that are available online and bring them to you in such a way that based on your interest. Maybe if your interest is on business news, then instead of having people look for this business news, you just have algorithms scrap through online and find the Swahili news and bring you. So those are among the things that we think that they don't require much of data, because the data is already available. So it's just the issue of applying the expertise and coming up with different solutions. But also there are areas, for example, issues on text auto completion. This is also another area that we see as a good opportunity for Africa, because take an example of how many sites that we visit today that when we're on those sites, we search for things. So for example, maybe it's news websites, we search for certain news. So for example, maybe it's on e-commerce websites, because e-commerce is one of the areas that is growing a lot in Tanzania. So those are among the websites that most people visit them. But by visiting them, most of the time we search for things. So imagine there are data already, those websites already have the data. So I imagine the cases that we could, if we could be applying text auto completion on those websites. So for example, maybe someone is just starting typing and then gets the auto completion, something that just Google already does. So these are things that we see, like there's no big limitation on getting into these problems and starting solving them. And these are areas that people are already using them. So has a very big impact on the way we. Those are among the few areas that I see there's a big impact when it comes to NLP. There are many more, but yeah, those are things that I can start with talking.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you're so right. There are many applications of these technologies. I think some of the ones you point out are important and incredibly valuable for not only for being able to make sure that people have the right information that they need and that they want, right? If you want to read news about a specific topic, you get to have that, you get to have it curated and kind of put in your hands. I think that's really valuable. And I'm also interested to see how even the same fundamental types of technologies that are used for these sorts of purposes can also be used, in other areas, possibly in healthcare or in agriculture. I think there's endless types of use cases, like you said. All right, I want to give Kevin and Nelson a chance to answer a similar question, but first I'm going to let Essa share a small poll that we have with you guys. So Essa, take it away.
Hello again, everyone. So part of this, like I said at the beginning, we want to hear your insights. And Frederick, Megan, Kevin, and Nelson have touched on a few topics, including some of the challenges and industries, but we want to hear from you as well. So I'll be sharing a link in the chat that has two main questions. Number one, what do you feel the biggest challenge is to getting NLP adoption to happen? And number two, what sectors do you feel NLP will have the biggest impact in? So go ahead, take a couple of seconds to answer that. And we will be using those insights because we'd love to see what all of you think. So feel free to fill that in, link in the chat.
All right, please keep filling that out. In the meantime, I am going to take it over to Kevin and Nelson to share a little bit about what other use cases they see are relevant for the African context, for Swahili language or other African language, natural language processing tools. You know, we kind of started touching on some of the challenges that Frederick was sharing about. If there are other challenges you would like to share about as well, feel free to do that.
All right, thank you, Megan, for the question. Well, we are going to be biased a bit and talk about another project of ours, so that will be the ELSA part. And in reference to the question, another application that can be seen from having Swahili NLP would be voice, for instance. So basically, the applications for having voice would include building systems that would try to understand how patients talking to doctors, and from what they say, essentially trying to extract information that would then be used to in the different sections of the pipeline to essentially diagnose the patient on what type of disease he or she might be facing from that. So I would like to say voice would be another good example for a very good use case for Swahili NLP. Unless you have something else.
Oh yeah, and just to add on to all of what Kevin and Frederick said, like most of mobile technology is built on either text or, as Kevin said, on audio or voice or phone calls or things like that. So, and especially in contexts like Africa where mobility is difficult, solutions to problems most often or can most often be made remote, and having NLP tools will help in like speeding up those solutions, making them more accurate, making them more effective, more efficient, and just making it better for easier for people offering the solutions and the people who need the solutions to like come together without and like eliminating the gap in between. And as for the challenges, I believe was part of the question. I would probably agree with Frederick, where he said that a big challenge is probably the data, and not just the data itself, but having people, I believe you said, having people able to work on the data. And we kind of discussed that earlier, or has been a discussion of ours. And we most definitely agree on that. There's not a lot of work, or I want to say not a lot of openly accessible work that is done around Bantu languages, and one of them being Swahili, and that is definitely a challenge. But also on the other end, a challenge, another challenge, I want to say, I mean, Kevin, you have something to say?
Yeah, sure. So just to add something on the challenge of data, on top of having the data being, let's say, not properly formatted, because some of the challenges that have been facing is that you'd have problem revolving around scarcity. So there being lack of enough or lack of proper data that we can use to within our research, could be training models and such, as well as having data that is not in the right shape. When it comes to society context, normally you'd think you could extract data from, be it Swahili Wikipedia or let's say Swahili sites like Jamii Forum, but it becomes difficult when you deal with with situations where the text that you find there are code switched. So things like Swanglish, you'd find people mixing Swahili and English, which on one part is good because say having a language model that is able to like either tell off or even having the Swanglish context to be able to produce good results, but at the same time makes it difficult to create models that are semantically or being proper Swahili as it's supposed to be. So that would be the other thing that I like to point out. And also another challenge uh, is research around Swahili. So even in our journey of trying to do what we do in terms of building Swahili first tools for NLP Swahili first tools, comes the problem of trying to create these native models that we keep speaking of. The research that is there for other languages like English, be Chinese, is helpful because, as we talked about, research is what powers uh, the creation of such tools, and having not enough research makes it difficult to kind of build these things on your own because either A, you have to make the research on your own, being that you have to dive in the math and create something that hopefully works, or be patient till when the next, I don't know, the next Hugging Face or Facebook comes with their own thing, which by that time is not what we want really. We want something that comes from Africa by Africa, which is
Yeah.
yeah.
But on the plus side is that along with the diversity of the African languages, there is a huge plus side that we all share. There is a lot in common in like most of the languages, specifically languages in sub-Saharan Africa, where these are just the Bantu languages. And we, part of our work with Inspired Ideas is doing a lot of research. And what we've come up with is that if a model built on one Bantu language has a huge potential of just informing or enabling further research or development in different other languages, say language from Namibia or languages from the Congo. And this is very, very unique in the sense that models in parts of, say, Europe or America cannot be used in this way because languages differ. The diversity of languages goes beyond just a few syllables or morphemes. It's huge, and that's, I can say that is the benefit of working with African with NLP in the African context.
I think you were kind of touching on it, Nelson. Ali Jr. asked in the chat, can we not just use tools already developed for other languages like English? So I think both of what you were talking about, about there not being enough research, about there not being enough data, about there not being enough maybe tools or support or whatever. Ali is interested, and as well as me, in knowing like, why can't we just copy and paste the same things that other people have used?
So maybe to touch on that.
Sure.
So one of the areas in the NLP is like I think something that Kevin was talking about. So there are issues of syllables and different phonetics. There are different cases that sometimes there might be challenges on trying to duplicate these models. But nowadays the research has been going so well in such a way that Kevin also mentioned that the likes of Facebook and Hugging Face. So these are among the companies that are pushing NLP a lot worldwide. And the good thing nowadays is that most of these models because Swahili letters are the same, like for the case of English. So there's a way that most of these models, specifically transformer models, work well when it comes to adapting them in other languages. So there are cases that we as Beltro have worked with different models that were specifically for English, but yes, by tuning them and applying them to the Swahili data, they're providing a very good results and they're working well for our cases. So this is one of the advantages that we have currently with this generation and with our startups is that maybe we don't have the fundings that Hugging Face has. Maybe we don't have the funding that Facebook has to have this well-experienced researchers to do that. But yeah, that's one thing that's what I was talking about earlier, the fact that having enough skills, this can at least help because you might not have these researchers to do all the math and all the jargons that go on into developing these models, but you can take over from what they've done and try to tune them and apply them on your problems. But I'm not saying that this applies in every case, but there are many cases that as researchers have keep on developing, we see that this is getting better and better, and it's somehow nowadays easier to take a model trained in one language and applying it in another language. And basically, that is what research worldwide is heading towards, creating the same models but working in different languages, irrespective of the different cases like syllables, phonetics, and different issues that come along. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. And thanks for sharing about what you guys are working on at Beltro and kind of how you're dealing with some of these challenges. I think it's really important. Essa, I'm interested in what your thoughts are around this topic as well.
So I have something to add here because recently, part of the podcast I slightly mentioned, we were doing some insights into NLP related and chatbot related initiatives, and we were talking to Ishangazi, and unfortunately, yes, I was not able to make it. But so on the recent episode, which we're supposed to release pretty soon, we broke down into the technical side of how they develop their NLP model. And interestingly, what you'll hear is that they used a simple existing system. They used dialogue flow for those who know of it, and basically just treated Swahili as if it's almost English, and they were able to get satisfactory results out of that. So that's just an interesting bit of information I wanted to drop there, and you'll be able to hear more about that on the episode when it does come out. If it doesn't come out soon, blame me, it's stuck on my side, so you know who to hold accountable. But on the side of the technicality, it seems that to a certain extent we are able to use existing tools, but how flexible do we need to be is when things start get tricky. And for that, I am not a technical person. I'm more of a, I'll explain to you the theory and then I'll pass it on to the awesome people who are here on this call, which I am going to do now. So back to you guys.
Thanks for sharing, Essa, and we are all looking forward to the podcast. I will be waiting with bated breath until it comes out. All right, I'm gonna take the same question to Kevin and Nelson because I think, for the work that you guys are doing as well, you've also come across these same challenges where, a copy and paste strategy isn't something that's going to work. So I'm interested in your thoughts about that. And also just maybe at the same time, there was a question in the chat around what kind of research around Kiswahili are you talking about? So maybe you can also share a little bit about that.
All right. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm just going to take on Brian's question in the chat. Are you the first organization to do this? If no, what's the difference between you and the rest on the approach of NLP for African languages? I would say, and I would ask for Kevin's approval on this, that we most definitely are not the first specifically on Swahili, but and just to use the next question in the chat to back up our next argument is that our approach is different because we are, or at least we strive to base not just on the computational side of things, but on the linguistic sides as well, in the sense that we're not only doing research on how to use algorithms and computer science or machine learning to do stuff, we're also basing on the linguistics of things. And there's a lot of research on Swahili out there, just not very, again, as accessible as a lot of other research, but it's very good work done by very different or a various group of institutions. One famous institution is the Helsinki Group from Finland, who have done great research on Swahili and come up with a very interesting tool that is used to break down the language or the words, specifically the verbs of the Swahili language, into morphemes that carry the basic information in the language. And another group or institution is the University of Chicago that has managed to develop an algorithm that probably does the same thing, but in a very different manner. And the difference between the two is that one of them uses predefined data to give out the output, and the other just uses computational capabilities of the computer to break down the data without having any prior knowledge on the language. Now, that is, we're basing off of that research, and we're trying to build in a more effective way, I want to say, in the sense that we as natives of Tanzania want to incorporate our knowledge along with uh, consulting experts in the linguistics field. And we have seen, or we have obtained potentially better results than we were having with the old models that we were just using, as a lot of people do, with taking the models built for foreign languages like English or Chinese or French or all that, and transferring them to Swahili, because part of the difficulty in transferring them perfectly or effectively is in what is known as the type of language. The English, French, and many of the other, I want to say, European languages, not all of them, but many of them are in this form of group, in this group known as the fusional or analytical languages, that are different from a lot of the Bantu languages that are agglutinative in nature, in the sense that they form independent words to give meaning to probably a sentence or a paragraph. While for languages like Swahili, you can just take a word and add morphemes either at the end or at the start to add meaning to the same word and change it completely. So that is part of the difficulty that comes in transferring or transfer learning from these completely different languages. But again, this is the advantage with Bantu. If we're able to, or if Africans in general come together, or one of us does a research and gives or produces a tool that is effective in one of the languages, it has huge potential because we share a lot of aspects in that sense. I will leave it off to Kevin now.
Yeah, just to like take from where you ended and take off on the second question, what kind of research around Swahili we are talking about? So just as Nelson mentioned, the various degrees of research, some including the one by the University of Helsinki. The project is known as the Salama project, which involves having like a predefined dictionary of morphemes and other subwords, and then using that knowledge to break off words in Swahili according to how it's seen in the dictionary. And the other one by the University of Chicago, the project being the Linguistica, which has a very systematic algorithm of how to break down words. So just taking the English context, you have words like jump and jumping, and it's able to deduce that from these two words. Ing is it's like an added component from jump because say it has seen other words like jump, and then this one is jumping, so it figures that ing is part of jump. So things like that. Now, when it comes to research, there's a huge degree of difference, especially when again recalling the question of why we cannot say copy and paste what was derived from English to Swahili. Inaonekana kwamba for the English language, right? As Nelson mentioned, it's in its own class of languages, which is not the same as Swahili. And coming to that, most of the models that exist, be it word2vec, be it BERT, are built on the concept that English has a nature X, but then trying to take models and then build up on Swahili uh, wouldn't extract the same level of information as opposed to innovating a way or trying to formulate another way to derive such information from Swahili. Uh, so again, so we have a word. So let's say in English you have the word labda, he cannot go, right? Those are 4 words. But then in Swahili you have haendi. Now trying to use an English trained model for he cannot go, right? The model understands the 4 words, and let's say he followed by can, and then maybe followed by not. But then in Swahili you have haendi, and given that, so Swahili being the agglutinative nature it is, I think I butchered the word, but being in that nature comes that you have haendi, you have siendi, just by changing like a couple of letters here and there, you have totally entire words with different meanings. So one research would be trying to find a way to break the word, let's say haendi, into the needed parts like ha and then and e, and then from that we extract the information. This means he cannot go. So things like that. And also we in terms of the research thing and for the models that are trained on other languages, Swahili is a under-resourced language, and for most of the models that exist for English, most especially that users make use of neural networks are usually brute force methods, which simply takes a bunch of data. So let's say you have, let's say 1 terabyte worth of data as opposed to of English data, as opposed to, let's say, a couple of megabytes worth of Swahili data. With most of the models, you're able to obtain very good representations of English languages because there's a ton of data to train on. But this is very different from Swahili. This is why, at least early on, we thought it would be premature to try to copy and paste the models essentially, rather than finding a way to get the information we need. So could we apply expert learning from the linguists or from the way we understand Swahili and things like that. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks. Thanks, Kevin and Nelson, for tackling lots and lots of questions. Ali has a question as well, just to keep going a little bit on the train of data. When we talk about tons of data to train our models, what exactly does that mean? And I know that this is a question I ask people all the time, because for all of you, I am not a technologist in terms of building the things like on the ground. And so I'm always asking, okay, well, how much data do we need? So I'd be interested to know, what are you guys thinking about in terms of how much data is actually required? And, you've all shared about getting some data from various sources, either from researchers that have made it available or possibly corpora that are out there and openly available. But there was another question in the chat from Upendo about, have you ever had to make your own data set, and what does that look like? So like how much data and like where are you getting it from? And Kevin and Nelson, I'll let you go first, and then Frederick, I'll come back to you.
Right, those are very interesting questions. Questions that I someday hope to never hear again, because they're kind of hard to answer, because in a way we still don't know, I want to say. When it comes to data, at least for me, it's more like, I want to say maybe the model data ratio, in a sense that given the model we're training on, so say this could be, if for example, it's a neural network that is let's say a couple of tons of parameters high, I would like to think that to have very decent representations, we need relatively lots more data. Now, the answer of lots here could vary from say 100 megabytes, and say if you're trying to build something relatively small, we'd like to think it's also relatively small. The way we work at least is try to iterate over by, we can do either do benchmarking or have like tests that try to emulate what we expect the results to be. And from that, we can say maybe, okay, it's doing better or it's doing meh, or things like that. So that's what I would like to talk about on that. And regarding Pendo's question, would you like to take this?
Uh, okay. Pendo's question is, what are the common sources of data that you use for training your models? Is most of it usable, or are there applications that still have gaps? Have you at any point had to create your own data sets? Wow, that's a lot and very relevant, very good questions. And just to add on to Kevin's point, is on the topic of data, it's not just more data, it's just more better data, because you can have tons and tons of data worth a whole story, a 10-story building full of CPUs, full of data, and that data could be nonsense, utter nonsense. So what's important is to know the problem, to understand the problem, and here, by understanding the problem, even in a single problem, there could be tens of hundreds of tiny problems that require sophisticated data just to push through. For instance, I want to say, for the moment in our current work, there are two steps. First is the tokenization of Swahili, and the second is training models that are to probably do tasks such as model the language or do sentiment analysis. And each of these tasks required specific kinds of data, or probably even different data sets, just to make sure that you're not overfitting or you're not overly optimistic about your results. So common sources of data, I'd say most of the time, for NLP tasks would be first, open source data. That's the cheapest way to go and probably the most efficient. And if there isn't any, we probably would almost always find our own, try to collect our own using Ali's and Megan's awesome support. And we usually get very good data. And this data usually comes with a lot of specifications that we try to put in, depending on what we've researched on or what we got from experts in the field. And that's just how we most often tackle the problem of data. But again, it's really hard to answer the question of how much data can you or do you need, and when is enough a lot, or a lot enough, or when is it ever enough? That's a very difficult question. And even in the human aspect, considering that machine learning is supposed to mimic, artificial intelligence is supposed to mimic human intelligence, we humans are constantly learning, and we always receive new data just to improve our quote unquote algorithm. And that should tell us something, that we should never expect that models will be perfect, and will most often, there is no endpoint to like feeding it data. It's just having to put in considerations and getting better data so that it learns the right things.
Interesting. And I get the point. I will stop asking how much data is needed. I'm sorry to all of you who I've ever asked that question to. Before we go on to our second poll, Frederick, I want to ask you a question. You know, we're talking about data, we're talking about how much data, what the quality of that data is. And I think there's this really interesting point around quality of data that becomes very relevant in some of the use cases you were talking about. So specifically, you know, you're talking about doing various things around news or curation, or, you know, being able to pull insights from various news channels and put them all together. There was a question previously in the chat from Ali about what the effect is around either increasing a person's self-belief or perpetuating negative beliefs. And we've seen this before recently, actually, across elections around the world, with algorithms recommending more and more intense or kind of like conspiracy theorist type of content to people once they, you know, even start poking at that. So and Ali's example was, if you don't like a certain tribe, for example, would I just keep getting recommendations of content that would have me confirm that I don't like that tribe? I'm interested how you guys are thinking about that at Beltro in terms of the data, and what we can do to help minimize bias across the tools that we're building.
Well, when it comes to the issue of bias, so my views on the issue of biasness, I think biasness is something very, I see it as something very complex, and I think it's somehow more, there's a there needs to be a deep understanding to it than most the way we talk about it. Because I think somehow biasness is somehow, I think, I somehow have a different view about biasness. So I think biasness at times, we know that biasness is something that people already have within, and sometimes they don't even know that they have it. So that's one of the biggest problems with biasness. And somehow that's why it's a very big challenge when it comes to tackling it. For example, maybe Ali said that an example of a tribe maybe has certain beliefs. So a certain tribe having certain beliefs, that is what they believe, that is what they believe is right. So if that is what they believe is right, so that is how they see things. So if that is how they see things, that is how they'll be doing things. So that makes it a challenge, because what's right to someone, maybe it's wrong to someone else. And maybe what's wrong to someone else, maybe it's right to someone else. So somehow the issue of biasness is a bit challenging. But what I would say is, one thing that maybe what we do at Beltro is thinking the process through, and by incorporating as many, having as many people as possible on the table as we think through these different solutions that we are developing. Because somehow what you've come to understand is, maybe you may find there's something to someone is biased in one area and doesn't even get to notice that, and as he or she is building a certain solution, she doesn't see that there's some sort of biasness that he or she has introduced in it. But someone else from outside looking at it, that's when you can understand, maybe I think there's something wrong, maybe this is not right. So I'll give you an example. For example, when I was at the university, I created there was a facial recognition system that we created those times. And one thing, as we were creating that facial recognition system, so most of the people at the universities are all Black people. So we didn't have white people at the university. So all the faces that we took of students, they were all Black pictures, most of them. I think all of them were Black pictures of students. And there was no point on the process of the development that it clicked on us that, hey, what if a white person comes at this university? What will happen? It was never there. And because of what? Because maybe of what we see, all the students that we saw were all Black students, but also so that made it, I would say that made it a chance for us to think through and see that maybe our system might be biased. Maybe it will not perform well when it comes to another person who's not a Black skinned person. So those are issues that that's what I was saying earlier, that when it comes to issues of biasness, is somehow complicated, and it can only be solved, or it can only be worked out by having thorough understanding and thorough analysis of the processes as you're doing them, because that's how you can and by incorporating as many people as possible, because that's the only way I think it can be able to overcome these biases, because one person's biasness cannot be maybe another person's biasness, and it's hard. It's a complicated challenge, complicated problem that has seeing our biasness. So I think that's something that I would say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think we could have an entire panel just on the issues of bias, both in data as well as bias in what is shown to the reader. So I think, like Ali is also pointing out in the chat, that, for example, if you use the Google News app and it only recommends content that you continue to respond to, won't that just continue to confirm your beliefs? So Frederick, like you're saying, if we have a belief that the world is this way, and we don't necessarily, think outside of that for whatever reason, then we can just keep getting the same information over and over again, and that can perpetuate negative beliefs, which of course isn't always ideal, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to ask Essa if you can please share the link to the next poll. There's a poll with just 2 more questions in it, so we can get some insights. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share the results of the previous poll with you. So 1 second. All right. I think hopefully you can see this part of the screen. That's the important part. So the previous poll that you guys had 2 questions. What is the biggest challenge for NLP adoption in Africa? The number 1 answer was lack of skills, which is interesting, and I, that's what I put it as well, but I do think that there are merits for some of the other choices, right? Lack of tools, like we were talking about, we can't just copy paste tools that have been used in other parts of the world and for other languages. So that's an important piece of this as well. And then someone said lack of people interested in NLP, which could also be true. I could imagine because it's very complicated, or could not be, maybe the most exciting thing to be working on. But it's clear to me that from our panelists' work that there are people who are excited. There are people who are very interested in working on this. And maybe, as I said, there's something that we can continue to do about the possible lack of skills that exists, so that we can make sure that people do have the skills and the knowledge that they need to be able to build these sorts of technologies. And our second question was, what sectors will NLP have the biggest impact on? So pretty even distribution across the board, except for agriculture, which is interesting because I've seen a number of cases for using NLP in agriculture, especially in chatbot form, making sure that technologies are available so that farmers who are in rural areas can maybe find out information about their crops or about crop prices or about the weather, things like that. So I think there are some use cases there maybe we'll find out more about. Of course, customer service, advertising and media like ads, and health and education, like we've heard some of the panelists talk about. So perfect. Really exciting insights. And just so you guys know, we're also going to be publishing a short white paper out of this talk as well, with some of these responses and with some of the conversation that we've been having, so that we can look together as a community about how to move forward with building these technologies. All right, and I think I have time for like maybe 1 more question. So we're gonna have to go a little bit quickly, but there's a running chat. And also, yes, please make sure you provide your input in the current poll that Essa just sent. He just sent the link again. Thank you so much. All right, so there's a running theme in the chat right now, a conversation about different, there's dialects, there's code switch in the language or in the data, like Kevin, you were talking about. There are different ways that words are pronounced or spelled depending on where you are in the world, even if you're speaking the same language. And with 2,000 languages, across the continent, and all of their dialects, we're dealing with tons and tons of variety and variation in the data and in the voices. So I'm interested in knowing, Kevin and Nelson, we'll start with you. How are we thinking about this? How do we deal with the different dialects, both in texting, like text or in speech? And how are we dealing with code switch? So switching between English and Swahili, for example. What are the best approaches there?
All right. Oops, sorry, we're having trouble with the video. There we are. Okay, I'd say, and this is part of the reason why our current approach is based on linguistics, is because of these things that pop up, the diversity, the difference. Like in order to understand that, you cannot depend or rely on a computer or on hardware, because it's even really tough for humans to understand, at least humans who have not sat down in a class and had extensive learning or understanding of how language works. So I would say the best way is to first, again, this is natural language processing. You cannot process something if you cannot write an algorithm to process something if you yourself cannot understand. So we usually take time to understand how the natural language works, and we, at least our current approach, believes that we believe that that is probably the best way to go, especially for under-resourced languages like Swahili. And I want to say, for the most part, we've learned a lot, and it's very interesting to just learn about the language you take for granted every day, and just learn how very uh, detailed it can be. And turning that into a mathematical equation is, well, it's not an easy job, but it's very interesting. And I feel like I'm going off topic, but please, Megan, take me back, because this is very interesting and very difficult question, especially to languages that have not had extensive research, like Bantu languages or languages, African languages. And so for the most part, to account for stuff like that, the best way to go is just to understand the natural language, at least from my perspective, which I believe I share with Kevin. And is just, first we need to understand the natural language, make sure we understand it, and not that have the belief that we understand it, because using it was one thing, but understanding it is a whole different issue. And because what you're doing for the algorithm or to the algorithm to make it work is try to teach it what you understand. And if you do not understand that, you will be feeding it bias, and that bias will translate very poorly in the field. So that is what we're trying to, I don't know, maneuver or find a way to curb the bias, and just try to create more inclusive, or I'm looking for a word, but I'm not getting it. But yeah, that is the point.
Yeah, thank you. I think the work that you guys are doing is difficult and important. So thanks for sharing. And I know that, you know, this is a big topic as well. This is one of those ones we could have like a whole panel discussion on probably. So maybe we can move some of those to other times to be able to continue that conversation. Frederick, I'm interested in your perspective as well about the same topic from the work you're doing at Beltro. How are you guys thinking about and focusing on, or even are you, kind of the various dialects, the various ways that people might say words or have lisps or something like that? I know that if you aren't doing speech, you know, it might be a little bit different, but yeah, I'm interested in hearing how you guys are dealing with some of this.
Okay, so I'm not that much fixed on the tech side of things, so maybe I can't go deep in that. And but I've seen it with the technical team, the way they do it. I think I can say much of it, but from what I've been seeing around going on with the tech team, I think they take into consideration of that. So I see them somehow, maybe let's say if there's a case that it's a scenario we want to do, let's say for example, I've seen it around on there was a speech project that we were working on, was in Swahili. So there was there were guidelines that were set from the team that the issues maybe, for example, because the project required the Swahili speaking from Tanzania. So there was much of consideration taken into it. I think the client wanted more, was targeting Tanzanian market. So there was so much effort put into the Swahili that is coming from the native speaking people in Tanzania. So I think those are issues that they're taken into consideration. So I can't go much on the technical side of things, but I just talk on it on the experience that I've seen what is going on.
Yeah, and of course, as a CEO, you're focused on the market and what does the market want. And I think some of this will end up be market driven, right? As these tools and technologies be developed, where are they actually going to be, you know, used first or used the most? So I think, yeah, it's a good point that you're focusing on where it's needed right now, and then you can continue to expand and grow from there. All right, I think we're getting close to time. So to wrap up, I'm going to wrap up my part, and then I'll hand it over to Essa to do his final words as well. But before we go, Frederick, Kevin, Nelson, I want you guys to share just one thing that from your work that the rest of the participants and the world, whoever watches this, should be looking out for. What should they be listening out for? And this is, particularly an opportunity for you to share something about your work that people might be interested in using in the future. So what should we look out for? And Frederick, I'll let you go first.
Okay, so I think because maybe the point of this fun discussion was to help the participants to get something out of this, and so that can help them and can help speed up the growth of Canap in Africa. So one thing that I think most people have challenge with is the issue of data. And with Africa, creating data also requires a lot of funding, and it's expensive getting all this data. So somehow this pushes we from Africa to come up with innovative ways of getting data. So that is something that I would like to really urge all of you participants, that we should think of data with a different perspective. Let's not go for the perspective that because that is not available, then we don't work on these different NLP problems, but to think of other ways around of how can we get this data. So I'll give an example of, there's a group called Masakane, which is I think the biggest NLP group in Africa. So I've been participating in that group and creating different, the different researches that we're doing at the group. So one thing, when we decided to start working on NLP problems in Africa, we decided to start with language translation. And so we wanted to start with language translation of the different African languages, but again, getting those data is a very big challenge, asking the cases of uniting different languages. But then the team came up with a very good creative idea. So we took, so Jehovah's Witness have they have translated their Bible in a lot of languages of African languages. So that is one of the things that we started and researched and exploited on that. So we took the different versions of the Bible of the Jehovah's Witness, which is translated in many African languages. So we started working on that. So for example, I'm from Tanzania. I took the Swahili Bible and the English Bible. The person from South Africa took the Zulu version and the English version. So that's sort of thinking. So those are the ways that I think we can somehow start working on them instead of dwelling on the issues that they are not data, but we can start getting innovative and creative and start working on the different problems. Maybe I'm not saying that maybe because it's somehow at times, not all times going with that approach, maybe we'll have the best results. But what I'm saying is a start, and it's a very good start on starting working on different NLP problems. Not only that, we explain that until we have this best data that to start working on. So I think that is my biggest takeaway that I'll give to all the people that have participated here. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. And I think we're all excited and looking out for more and better data for these sorts of technologies. Frederick, from the perspective of Beltros, is there something that you guys are working on that like I might be able to use, or anyone on this panel or on the call might be able to use as well? Something from the work that you're doing that we could all access?
Oh, yeah, okay. So at Beltro, we're working with creating chatbots. So we have a chatbot platform whereby we are providing to our clients where they can create their own chatbots, and it has the different services that for the case of, we're targeting more the chatbots on the business side of customer service. So one of the biggest features that it has is being able to provide human handoff in such a way that after feeding knowledge to your chatbot, and somehow maybe there's knowledge that is not able to respond to, then you can have a human handoff which can be able to do that. But also it's a platform that doesn't require coding at all. It's just you getting on your hands and focusing on the knowledge that you want to feed to your chatbot. But also another thing that you're focusing on is an area on semantic search. I think I talked about it earlier. So with the semantic search, somehow the way we're approaching it, we're studying it from the we are targeting it from the bottom up approach, whereby those the issues that I was talking about, the text summarizations, the issues on text classification. So those are all the components that we've been working on, all of them to build on the issue of semantic search. So semantic search is something that, for example, for the case that what Google is doing is not only searching by words, but or by keywords, it goes further by searching by meaning. So which makes it easier for any person to get information in a way that is more conversational, and it's not only conversational, but it's more meaningful and it's easier to get information. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I might request that you add into the chat your website, any way that people can contact you who might be interested in learning more about what you're doing or accessing any of your tools and services.
Okay, awesome.
All right, and Kevin and Nelson, tossing it over to you for a last statement.
Okay. By the way, the Beltry team, very interested to see how the tool's gonna come up. But on our end, we are something to look forward to on us is at the moment we're very research driven in a way, but hopefully to deliver good tools. So at the moment we're wrapping all the ideas, all our research in a tool called Mary. It's something that compiles all our essentially like all the models, all the things that we are doing to try to make computers essentially understand Swahili natively, and through that is something to look out for. Really, we hope uh, it's very developer centric in the sense that we think that it will be mostly useful to people who want to build things on top of that, and so as like a case study, we hope to build Mary on top of Elsa. So Elsa being a project that deals with health, we'd like to create an abstraction on that such that we have patients who say could be either have a chatbot or talk to through a speaker, and then have the NLP work its magic so that it's able to extract information, and then the information can be fed off to the Elsa models, and then proceed with the pipeline. So yeah, very exciting stuff. Yeah, that's it for us.
Awesome. Yes, very exciting and looking forward to all of that work you guys are doing. I would also say the same if you could just write in the chat how people could find out about you, your work, how they can connect to you. I think that would be great. And that is my piece ended. Thank you all so much for being with me on this panel. Thank you for all your questions, and to all of the participants for your questions and your comments in the chat. I think this conversation is really important and really timely. So I'm interested to continue to see how we can have it over the rest of the course of the Sahara Sparks conference, as well as into the future. And with that, Essa, I'll pass it on to you.
Hello again, everyone. It's been great having you guys join us, and I hope you guys were as engaged as I was. I had the advantage of knowing a little bit about this beforehand, so hopefully it was more interesting for you guys. And as always, we want to continue having these conversations, keeping them going, and continue engaging, even though we are not in person and present. And the different ways we can do this, one of those is please make sure if you found something interesting, if you had an interesting quote, if you found anything you'd like to talk about, feel free to post on social media. Tag all of us that you'd like to tag: Sahara Sparks, the AI Lab, Inspired Ideas, Beltro. Tag your friends that you want to drag into the conversation, because why not? We can fetch people these days on social media. And on top of that, this is more of the conversation overall. We will be having a second part to this that is more of a technical workshop based, and we will send information about that. If you'd like to go through more of this later on, you feel like there's something that you heard you want to listen to again, we will be uploading this entire conversation to YouTube, and you'll be able to listen to it as much as you want. Like, we're not going to limit you to how many times you can rewatch this. I'd recommend at least once, but you're free to do more. As far as your insight and your feedback is concerned, I have one more poll, a last one for all of you to fill in as we are wrapping things up. And if you have any questions, feel free to write them to me as well, to write them to any of the people here. You can tag them, as I said, on social media. And with that, I'll give the couple of last seconds to fill the poll. And I see there's a question in the chat. Kevin, you can type out the answer if you have the time. Otherwise, Brian, I'd recommend you just fetch Kevin on social media and let him answer it there. I mean, sometimes why not make people answer in public? Spice things up a bit. You can tag me as well. I'll put in my thoughts and comments. That's not a problem. And with that, I will ask our tech and host to roll the outro. And we will thank you for joining us and have a great evening.